of myths called from the available resource materials that I've been able to find. And we also have a list of Philippine gods and goddesses. People don't seem to realize how rich our own mythology is. You would look at a particular, you look at the Greek mythology, it's so passé. You look at our mythology, that's where you have edge, that's where you have bite. You have gods there who are goddesses of lost things. You have goddesses of the moon. You have, I'm assuming we're all mature enough that I can mention things related to sex without you tittering like little girls, right? Yeah, right. Okay. You have, everyone knows Venus and Aphrodite, goddess of love and romance, of sex. In local mythology, some of our cultures, you could have as many as a group of gods just basically concerned with the very specific aspects of conception. Okay? These are things that people don't know, people don't explore. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to see other people doing that. That is why I write. That is why I try to encourage other people like you, to also write. Because there are things that can be said, stories that can be told, that can only be told by people like me, by people like you. Okay. This is an example of the type of story that I want to tell. This is a collaboration I have with a very talented artist named Hannah Buena. And it's coming out in, I think, around November in a free publication called Espresso. They give out free comics at selected areas and near the LRT stations. Basically, I wanted to have a story which would mix steampunk and local folklore and set it in the time immediately after the very brief British occupation of the Philippines. So there are things out there that I want to see that nobody else is going to see or nobody else is going to be able to do. That's one of the reasons why I write. Little quote here, it's hell writing, but it's hell not writing. The only tolerable state is just having written. But at the bottom of all the reasons why I write, and there are many, I have as many, I could go on and on like someone who could go on and on about a girl he loves. That's the same way I feel about writing. But at the very bottom of it is I write because I need to write. I'm a writer. It's how we breathe. You can't not write, you can't be in that position where you're not actually doing a story or researching for a story because it's like you're bleeding out, okay? But as this quote might indicate, it's not easy. Writing is not easy. Being a writer is easy. Being a good writer is hard, but being a writer, you either are or you aren't. If you love writing, if you can't not think about writing during the day, then you're a writer whether you like it or not, and you have my condolences. What I'm going to try to do, as I wrap things up here, is try to give a few tips as to how, as a writer, you can avoid the cardinal sin of writing, which is to not write. Tip 1, allow yourself to fail. Okay, man up, kid. Okay, basically, people think writing is not extemporaneous speaking. You don't get up there with your pen in front of an audience and start writing, and then once you're done, that's it. You touch move. Whatever you put in there, that's how people will judge your story. Writing is not that. Writing is like sculpting from scrap metal. You get a lot of crap, you get a lot of trash, you put it together. The important thing is you have something. And then once you have something, no matter how ugly it is, then you start chipping away. Then you start forming it. Okay? Writing involves writing and rewriting, drafting and redrafting. The best authors you know, what you see in the books, in the stories, even in the movies you have, these are not the first tries they've had. These are like the final drafts, okay? And you have to allow yourself to suck the first time you write. The first time you write, don't be afraid that, you're writing it sometimes, and if it's a long story, halfway through you'll take a look, you'll try reading back at it, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I wrote that, it's so cheesy, oh my God. It doesn't matter. You have to finish what you're writing. Once you're done, you can go back and take out all the parts that are embarrassing and what you wouldn't want your parents to read. But you have to have something to work with. People, one of the worst sins of writers is they start writing, say, oh no, this is crap, I'm not gonna read it, crumple, throw away, start something new. And at the end of like a year, while somebody else will have one story that they've gone through, that they've developed for that year, this person will have hundreds of potentially good stories that never got off the ground. Okay? You will never be able to sell hundreds of rejected one-liners. You can sell one story that you've rejected 100 times. Okay? Next. Tip 2, ideas are cheap. Okay? I don't know if you've been to the DVD stores and you've seen these people trying to peddle you, Star Wars with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay? Or like when like Harry Potter movie 12, it bugs the mind. Ideas are cheap. People sometimes it's a common question writers get. Where do you get your ideas? Where do you get your ideas? Ideas are never the problem. Ideas are a dime a dozen. The trick is always picking the right one and executing it well. Some people, when Google came out, some people, it killed a lot of writing careers because people would, have this great idea for a story and they decide, oh, I want to see if anybody else has ever done this, and they Google it and they come up with thousands of hits of people who wrote exactly the same story. That doesn't matter. Okay, it's not. While having a unique idea would be great, that's not what makes a good story. What makes a good story is the execution. Okay, and don't worry. Ideas, you can get them from anywhere. That's not where you need to concern yourself. You need to concern yourself with, as I said in the first tip, with keeping at it, with keeping on writing. Yeah. The third. Tip 3 is no more. You can see this little extension cord plugged into itself here. Okay, there is a writing adage that basically says, write what you know. Okay, my picture. There's a writing adage that says write what you know. That's true to an extent, but you can't take that adage alone. The point of if you write what you know, you'd only be able to write your autobiography. And while I'm sure you all have interesting lives, if you're going to be a writer, you have to be able to write about more than what you know. More than yourself, I mean. The trick there is knowing more. There is a rigor that is demanded of any good discipline that you need to be able to have if you're going to be excel in anything, but in particular in writing. If you want to write about a jeepney ride and you've never taken a jeepney, don't write that story. You go out, you take a jeepney ride. Okay? If you want to write about write about being in love and you've never been in love, well, go out and be in love first. It's not that hard. Okay? You don't have to get it exactly right. I mean, if you want to write about a girl being in love, you don't have to, go and become a girl. But you have to know more. The more you know, the better your writing will be. So you can't just limit yourself to what you already know. You go out and you research. When I was writing about, when I was planning Kataas-Asan, that was the comic that I'm doing with Hannah, I realized that, well, not for that particular story, but for the stories that come after, I realized that I couldn't write about the Philippines as a whole in the pre-Hispanic, in the Spanish time, without knowing a lot about Islam, without knowing a lot about how people in the South would live, because for a long period of time they were independent states in the South, and you have to know these things if you're going to treat your topic with respect, and that's the only way you're going to succeed in making a good story. Now, for tip 4, get a second and third opinion. There is this ridiculous romanticized image of the writer in his room typing away, ignoring food, ignoring other people, not talking to anyone until he's finished his masterpiece. You're just gonna go crazy. That's just an excuse for bad writing and being a bad person. Okay? You need to have other people around you. If you can find other writers who will be able to support you, that's important, because writing is hard. For writers, writing is the most difficult thing. There's a quote that goes, writing is so easy, you just cut open your veins and bleed onto the page. Okay, it's hard. And you need, as with any hard task, you need encouragement, and people who will understand you will usually be fellow writers. Most importantly, people who are going to critique you and edit you are fellow writers. No one is going to be able to make a masterpiece by themselves because they will have blind spots. You will have some bad habits or prejudices you won't be able to see, that you'll only be able to expose if you show your work to somebody else. That's why it's important to find other people, to find your birds of a feather. And the last tip is to keep writing. Okay, it goes through all the other rules, but it's the most important, so I'm emphasizing it again. If you play almost any sport, okay, whether it be basketball or soccer or whatever, the point is not to, because I don't believe in writer's block. I don't. Okay, what you have like in sports, if you're practicing shooting your you're practicing your 3-point shot and you're missing, you're not going to stop and say, well, I'm not hitting all my shots, therefore this practice is useless. No, you keep on throwing the ball at the hoop, and that's what you have to do with writing. There's no such thing as writer's block. It's just writers losing confidence. You have to keep writing whether or not you make that goal. And that's the most important thing of all. So with that, thank you very much.
Okay na.